Room full of rocking chairs. Chapter summary. This chapter contains mild explicit content. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. In her dreams, she sees Adrian bound in red string. One night spent together and the image of him completely naked is burned into her unconscious mind, every arch and curve of his body laid bare and presented for her approval. A gloved fingertip trailed down his chest, watching his breath hitch as her other hand tightened around the string attached to a collar around his neck. In her dreams, the roles are reversed and Adrian stands in front of the mirror, hands bound above his head and eyes masked by a black, silk blindfold. Kiss him. A suggestion tickles the back of her mind and she rises to press her lips against his panting, gasping mouth. Touch him. A gloved hand reaches down, grasping his length as a soft, breathy cry escapes the back of his throat. Strike him. He yelps as her free hand strikes his unprotected backside, savoring the sensation of her hand gripping his firm, toned ass. Good girl, again. The voice in the back of her mind is followed by the sound of another slap, another mewling whine from Adrian. Again. Broad, muscular shoulders strain against the ropes that hold Adrian completely helpless under her touch. Softer. She lets the pain settle in, watching the color of his skin blush under her touch. Now harder. The brief reprise is only to build anticipation for the next strike, one that makes his cock twitch and knees almost buckle. Good girl. She realizes the voice she thought was in the back of her mind isn't in her mind at all. Her own collar tightens, red string tangled in the fingers of the figure sitting behind her. Green eyes glint approvingly as he tugs her head backwards, turning her attention away from Adrian and pulling her back into his lap. Her bare thighs straddle his hips, close enough to feel him rise between her legs as the tight, sinewy shadows wrap around him like a skin-tight suit. The red string untangles from Adrian, slowly binding her arms behind her as a hand tilts her head up to look at him. The dream always ends with a single word that lingers in her waking mind. Mine. How long after having casual sex with someone should you call them back? Alia's fork paused halfway between her rice bowl and her mouth. You can see that I'm eating over here, right? And Marinette said, popping a piece of chicken in her mouth as she looked down at the phone. And I don't need the image of Adrian dripping hot wax on your stomach flitting through my head, Alia said, putting her fork down and taking a long sip of water. He didn't drip hot wax on me, Marinette said, biting her lip thoughtfully and cocking her head to one side. Although how am I supposed to know when you're supposed to call Master Catboy back? Alia said, wiping her mouth with a napkin. I mean it's only been a week since you've seen him in person. When do you usually call dates back? I don't know, it's been literally years since my last one, Marinette huffed, rocking back and forth in her seat. I mean we've been texting and stuff since last Sunday but I don't know if it's too soon to make plans with him. I can still see the hickeys he left on your collarbone through your blouse and you make another booty call. Alia asked as Marinette buttoned her blouse up self-consciously. I didn't say it was another booty call, Marinette said, scratching her reddening cheek. I don't know, wanted to see if he wanted to get lunch or something. Like a date. And no, Marinette coughed. Eating together doesn't mean we're romantically involved, does it? Actually, it does, Alia said, resting a hand on Marinette's shoulder. I'm sorry to say. We've been dating for the past 10 years on and off. Should probably think about getting me that ring then, Marinette snorted. Why does the up-and-coming magazine writer who still lives with her parents have to get the ring? Alia asked. You're the suave young fashion designer for the moment, Marinette under her breath. You get me the ring if you want me so Alia trailed off with a small frown. For the moment. It's nothing, Marinette said quickly, taking a small bite of her wrap before she could further incriminate herself. It was a tactic that might have worked with anyone else, but Alia had a steel double-locking bear trap of a mind. Once she sniffed out that someone was withholding information from her, it was impossible to shake her. A small silence hung between them, punctuated only by the sounds of passing pedestrians as Alia simply waited for Marinette to fill her in. By this point Marinette should have known that resistance was futile. It's just work stuff, Marinette said, waving a hand dismissively. We had 1 or 2 buyers that were interested in our lines drop out suddenly on Monday. Can they do that? Alia asked. Ink hadn't been put to paper yet, Marinette shrugged. And if they did we can't exactly take them to court with the army of lawyers we don't have on retainer. That sucks, Alia muttered, furrowing her brow. No explanation. None, Marinette sighed, picking a raw red onion out of her wrap with a frown. Ellie has been trying to get back in touch with them, but no one is taking our calls. Screw 'em, Aaliyah said. Who needs their rude, inconsiderate asses anyway? We do, Marinette laughed bitterly. We were in touch to produce some of our designs in larger stores, but now, Marinette sighed, blowing bubbles in her drink. Bit of a heartbreaker, but what can you do? Marinette said with a small shaky smile, fishing out an ice cube to gnaw on. Egg their offices, Aaliyah suggested. Somehow that doesn't scream support our products, Marinette said, tapping her chin. Well, either that or blackmail, Aaliyah said. No, I would need something to hold over their heads first, Marinette sighed. I could dig. I think I'll just focus on things I can control for the moment, Marinette said, tapping her phone thoughtfully. Didn't know Adrian was letting you control him now, Aaliyah snickered. Still a little early in the game for that in my opinion, Marinette said, rubbing her neck. Mainly because of the fact my real-world experience basically ended last Saturday. Well, I can't exactly help you there, Aaliyah said. Really? Marinette whined. You're telling me you're not a secret dominatrix who can impart worldly wisdom to me? I think you would have known by now if I was, Aaliyah said with a small wink. Why don't you find yourself one of those? A dominatrix? Marinette said, raising an eyebrow. I don't think that fits the definition of Adrian and I being exclusive. Someone's mind is in the gutter, Aaliyah snorted. Look, you're going down a road I can't/have no earthly desire to go down with you. I don't know what the appropriate time frame for calling someone back after they hung you from the ceiling by your nipples is. What do you think we do? Marinette asked, folding her hands over her chest subconsciously. No, seriously, where are you getting these? My point, Aaliyah said, barreling onwards. Is that you can't exactly ask Adrian for advice about, well, himself. Your source is compromised since he railed you through his mattress, so why don't you get another? Just to talk with, Marinette said. Why not? Aaliyah shrugged, plopping her plastic fork in her empty bowl and dropping it into her bag. Get some outside perspective from a more experienced weirdo so you don't have to rely on Adrian for everything. I guess, Marinette shrugged. What if they want me to do weird sex stuff in exchange for information? Tell me and I will suplex the kink out of her, Aaliyah said sweetly, patting Marinette on the shoulder. I know you guys think you're all hardcore and stuff because you wear leather and swing whips around, but I can and I will kick the ass of any internet weirdo that gets too fresh with you. Other than Adrian. Marinette chuckled. Don't get me wrong, I love the guy, Aaliyah shrugged. But say the word and I will plant him like a tree in the ground. Achoo. Gesundheit, Nino said offhandedly, glancing over the top of his laptop at Adrian sprawled out on his couch. Coming down with something. Someone must be talking about me, Adrian chuckled, idly glancing down at his phone. So do you think I should call her or, remember when we used to talk about stuff that wasn't your sex life? Nino sighed, deleting a few shoddy pictures as Adrian blew bubbles in his soda. Well, we could talk about yours, but I feel like that's going to be a short conversation, Adrian snickered. Hey Nino, how's it going? Nino said in a flat imitation of Adrian's voice. What's going on with your life? Wow man, thanks for asking. Yeah, work is going great for me so far. Oh really? That's just super. Yeah, thanks, Adrian. I'm really glad I have a friend who shows interest in something other than Marinette Dupain Cheng's naked ass. I have been talking about her a lot, haven't I? Adrian sighed, head flopping back on the pillows. If by a lot you mean exclusively, then yes, Nino snorted, biting his thumbnail as he played around with filtering in one picture. Just call her up, man. I don't want to seem pushy, Adrian muttered. Then don't call her, Nino sighed, tapping his finger on the desk. I don't want to come off as distant either. Then call her. But what if she wants some space or oh my god, dude, you are the biggest waffle of a dom I have ever met. Nino groaned. I mean I'm technically a switch, but fuck me, man, it's not like you're asking her to move in with you or anything. Nino sighed. Just call her like a normal person. All right, Adrian said, holding his hands up. Sorry, Nino sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose and taking a deep breath. Fuck, sorry, man, I just got a lot on my plate right now. Oh, Adrian pushed himself into a cross-legged position on the couch, scratching the back of his neck. Now that Adrian thought about it, the last couple weeks had been filled with a lot of him fretting at Nino about the whole Marinette situation, and not a whole lot else. Nino had always projected such an air of calm that Adrian mistakenly assumed he always had his life completely together. Sorry, is everything okay? I think. Nino snorted, leaning back in his chair as his files compiled, jiggling his leg as he stared into space. That's kind of the problem, things going well is a problem for you. Adrian snorted. It is when things are going well enough that you think that you need to do something about it, Nino said, glancing around his apartment thoughtfully. I think I want to ask Aaliyah if she wants to move in with me. Adrian blinked. Oh wow, real. Yeah, Nino nodded, glancing around the loft with a thoughtful nod. Yeah, I think it's just, I don't know, she spends more nights here than she does at home anyway, she's always going on about how she feels underfoot now that her sisters are in high school and I'm here with this loft that's too big for me because I was an overpaid fashion photographer for 5 years whose boss paid for his room and board. You weren't overpaid, Adrian insisted. Bro, it wasn't like I was hanging out of a helicopter taking pictures of war zones, Nino snorted. I think the most volatile thing I had to deal with was the swimsuit models whose cappuccino order got lost in traffic. That can be just as dangerous, Adrian chuckled. Point is, I have a girlfriend in need of a less chaotic place to live, an ample room with which to house her and her entire library, Nino said, standing up with a small grimace. Might have to knock a wall down to make room for her bookshelves, but, I don't know, you think it's too much too soon. Adrian shrugged. Not my relationship, man. Come on, Nino whined, running his fingers through his hair. I don't ask for life-altering advice nearly as often as you do. Humor me, what would you do if you were in my situation? Dating Aaliyah. Yeah, you wish, buddy. Pretend your girlfriend of 2.5 years. Yes, I'm counting. School is currently stressed out because she's underfoot in her own home, Nino said, scratching his cheek. What would you do? It wasn't often that Adrian felt jealous of Nino, and when he was, it always came as a surprise. Adrian never brought it up, mainly because he felt ridiculous for even feeling the way he did, but Nino had all the things he ever wanted growing up: a supportive family, the ability to pursue his passions without fear of retaliation, and the ability to befriend and date whoever he chose. And now, well, just imagining himself in Nino's shoes and Marinette and Alia's made a hot churn of envy well up in his stomach, which he did his best to stamp out. I would do it, Adrian said with a smile he hoped was natural looking. I mean, you two are already so perfect for each other. I can't think of a good reason why you shouldn't at least ask her. We're hardly perfect for each other, Nino snorted, cheeks darkening a little as he smiled a little distantly. We butt heads as much as any other couple, we just don't let it fester. Maybe that's just what perfect for each other means, Adrian shrugged. How romantic, Nino snickered, shutting his laptop and unplugging the flash drive. I think I'll ask her tonight, just get it out of the way. Probably a good idea, Adrian nodded, unfolding himself and slowly rising from the couch. You heading off? Yeah, I got 2 back-to-back shoots this afternoon, Nino said, cracking his neck as he grabbed his camera bag. Male models at 1 and a finishing school for teenage girls at 4. Yikes, Adrian said, stretching like a cat as he traipsed towards the door, glancing down at his phone thoughtfully. Being a friend with benefits meant being a friend with benefits, didn't it? Why should he feel so bizarre about calling Marinette up to see if she wanted to share a meal? Yikes indeed, Nino sighed. I'm spending all afternoon surrounded by selfish, entitled, stuck-up, selfish little brats. At least the girls' shoot won't be so bad. Wanted, experienced female dominant willing to offer advice to a new switch in committed relationship with male switch. Not looking for additional play partners at the moment, just some outsider perspective and advice. No sooner did Marinette post her ad in the personal section of Salon Velours, her phone buzzed, almost spilling to the sidewalk as she walked. For a moment, she wondered if her prospective femdom life coach had heard Marinette's soul cry out for counsel and responded with whip-like speed. Adrian, hey, do you want to grab dinner or something? Her heart skipped a small beat, silently grateful that Adrian had taken the initiative and texted first. Adrian, it doesn't have to be today or anything, I just wanted to get out of the house for a bit. Marinette, no, today works for me. Marinette, just got to wrap up a few things at work and I should be ready to go at about 5-ish. Adrian, great. Adrian, I think Nino and Aaliyah might be occupied, so it's probably going to be Justice if that's cool with you. Eating with someone doesn't mean you're in love with them, Marinette reminded herself as she replied. They were still only friends. Marinette, no, that's fine. Marinette, occupied. Adrian, I don't know if I can tell you yet. Then again, being friends with benefits meant being friends with benefits. Marinette, do you want me to beg? Marinette, you know I can beg really really well Adrian, don't I know it Tilda Adrian, I'll let you have this one on the house. Marinette, thank you sir Tilda Adrian, Nino is going to ask Aaliyah to move in with him. Marinette, seriously? Adrian, yeah. Adrian, why do you think she won't go for it? Marinette, no it's not that Marinette, to be honest I think she's been dropping hints to him for a while now Marinette, not that I blame her, even I get stressed out when I'm over at her place with all her relatives underfoot Marinette, it's just, a little weird to think about Adrian, weird to think of your friends doing adult stuff. Marinette's stomach churned, privately envious of Aaliyah for the briefest moment before shaking her head and forcing an ugly thought out of her mind. Marinette, yeah lol Marinette, I barely feel like an adult myself Adrian, well, Adrian, you were plenty adult for me last Saturday. Marinette, oh Adrian, and Sunday, 3C Marinette down boy. Marinette, I can't deal with these wanton advances while I'm trying to work. Adrian, if you think that's me being wanton, you clearly don't know what wanton looks like from me Tilda Marinette, are you saying you're going to give me a demonstration of your wantonness? Adrian, if you like. Marinette, Adrian, if there's anything I can do to make your decision a little easier, let me know. Marinette, I'll let you know at dinner tonight Marinette, only if you stop distracting me though Tilda. Adrian, I'm a distraction. Adrian, I'll take that as a compliment Tilda Marinette, take it however you want Kitty, I need to work. Adrian, Kitty. Marinette, you use cat emojis like a third grade weeboo, what did you expect? Adrian, excuse me. Adrian, cat emoticons add a touch of whimsy and personal charm to every text message. Carrot equals Marinette, lol okay sure whatever you say Kitty Adrian, 3 Adrian, I hope you're prepared for me to message you the entire cat emoticon database in every text Phi Omega Phi Marinette, again, if this is some kind of punishment I would rather you just spank me or something Adrian, equals O. Adrian, I'll keep that in mind Princess equals Omega equals Marinette laughed in spite of herself, wondering how she could have ever found Adrian intimidating to talk to. Marinette, oh yes, sir, talk kitty to me Adrian, does my encyclopedic knowledge of cat emojis arouse you my pet? Phi Omega Phi Marinette, I have never wanted you more than I do now Marinette, I beg you, sir, see sir my fragile loins shall burst into flames Adrian, Omega Marinette, no stop Adrian, asterisk Phi Omega Phi asterisk Marinette please have mercy on my poor libido Adrian, alright, I'll let you off the hook. Adrian, for now Phi Omega Phi Sigma Sigma Marinette snorted, stowing her phone in her purse as she approached her office. She couldn't remember the last time she had fun just text flirting back and forth with someone. Even if it wasn't going anywhere, the lingering cat emojis managed to put a smile on her face and almost made her forget the sudden string of work trouble. Marinette forgot how a few words from Adrian always managed to put her in a good mood. A good mood that was unceremoniously ruined by the presence of Marcel Dubois running his greasy hands all over her shirt. Thankfully it wasn't the shirt she was wearing at the time, if it had been, the biggest dick in fashion would have discovered what Marinette had learned in the 4 years she studied Wing Chun from an elderly chain-smoking sifu at the Brooklyn Jewish Community Recreation Center. Nevertheless, Marinette was more than a little distraught to find Adrian's former boss waiting for her in her personal office when she returned, pretending to admire the blouse she was working on. She knew he was only pretending because she saw him when she walked in the front door of her studio suddenly pretend like he hadn't been waiting for her to arrive for the past half hour. Company, Ellie murmured, taking the designs from Marinette and nodding towards her office in the back. How long? Marinette asked. Half an hour, Sylvia said, leaning over the desk as Marinette looked over the designs Sylvia had been working on. She didn't particularly care that her boyfriend's friend's former boss was lurking in her office like some kind of pale, shrimpy goblin, whatever he was here for could wait until she had signed off on a couple of designs like she was supposed to do. He just barged in here while you were out, should we? Ellie stiffened as a set of heavy footsteps trailed out of the office, nodding behind Marinette. Marinette turned, coming face to chest with a tall, broad, bald man in a well-tailored suit. The man coughed into his hand, adjusting his tie a little anxiously as he spoke in a soft, halting voice. Mr. Dubois would like to speak with you. Thank you, Marinette said with a small smile. Please tell him to make himself comfortable and I'll be with him shortly. The man opened his mouth, turning back over his shoulder to look at Marcel, who was trying his very hardest to appear aloof while clearly waiting for Marinette with the patience of a 5-year-old child waiting for church to be over. The man looked torn for a moment before traipsing back through the door to Marinette's private office. Marinette tried to focus on the designs in front of her as the bald man's calm voice tried to explain to a wheezy Chihuahua-sounding Marcel that Marinette was busy and would get to him when she could. More Chihuahua-like yapping followed, and before Marinette could sign off on more than 2 designs, the man from before approached again, fidgeting as he anxiously cleared his throat. Mademoiselle. The man stammered as Marinette glanced up at him. Mr. Dubois would like to speak with you, now. If it's convenient, I'll be with him as soon as I can, Marinette said, not sparing a glance towards the room at the back of the office. But Mr. Dubois didn't make an appointment and I have a few more important things to attend to. Marcel had heard that if his huff of indignation was anything to go by, but she couldn't bring herself to care if she was being rude or not. It was rude that he had barged into her office without as much as a phone call to let her know he was coming, it was rude that he treated her boyfriend friend worse than his own father treated him, and it was rude that he thought he could rub his grubby little hands all over a blouse in progress without even asking. Under the circumstances, Marinette thought paying him any respect at all would just be throwing good courtesy after bad. So she took her time, doing the actual work she was supposed to get done while the chairman of a multinational fashion conglomerate stood in her office behind her. Do you want me to call the police? Sylvia mused as Marinette passed a stack of designs back with her approval. I can handle this, Marinette said with a small smile. But if anything happens, call Aaliyah. That's a little extreme, Marinette snorted, smoothing her skirt a little anxiously. Ellie shot her a thumbs up as she passed, suddenly feeling like she was back in school and being called to the principal's office. She took a deep breath, straightening her back and marching into her office without another moment's hesitation. Marcel had his back to her while the tall man stood silently in the corner. Thank you for waiting, Marinette said in a short, clipped tone of voice that afforded Marcel Dubois the barest courtesy. He didn't respond immediately, still pretending to admire the blouse hanging on the mannequin, which made Marinette's nostrils flare. This is fairly promising, Marcel remarked, fingering the lapel button and not even bothering to look at Marinette. Those silk blouses are hardly avant-garde, are they? It's chiffon, actually, Marinette said, folding her arms. There were many reasons Marcel Dubois was hated in the fashion industry: his hair, his dress, his breathy nasally voice, his shriveled prune of a face more punchable than a speed bag. But mostly, it was the fact that Marcel had worked for Gabriel for 10 years after a career as the CFO of a fruit-packing conglomerate and still hadn't bothered to learn the first thing about fashion. His scathing contempt for the artists and designers was palpable and matched only by his ignorance of how fashion actually worked. It was often said, jokingly, that Marcel Dubois couldn't tell silk from chiffon. Marinette would have been amused had she not been so depressed that this man now controlled one of the most influential fashion brands in France. Of course it is, Marcel said, coughing as he turned around to face Marinette. You've met my associate, I see. Yes, Marinette said, nodding to the man in the corner with a small smile. He's been quite helpful. Yes, Bruno has many talents, Marcel said in what he thought was an ominous tone of voice. He's an associate of mine I keep around to help me with some more unpleasant tasks. I'm Mr. Dubois' new secretary, Bruno said quietly. Mostly that involves picking up Mr. Dubois' laundry, answering his emails, scheduling his meetings, and Bruno trailed off as Marcel shot him an exasperated glare. Bruno, strong and silent means being strong and silent. Yes, Mr. Dubois, Bruno sighed, folding his hands in front of him. Are you using a tall bald man to try and intimidate one of 8 people in the world on a first-name basis with Gorilla? Marinette asked, smirking as Marcel's sour expression proved that that was exactly what he was trying to do. Care to explain why you're here? Wouldn't you like to know? Marcel said, face twisting into an alien imitation of a human smile. That is a very good question, isn't it, Bruno? Oh, what could the acting chairman of a multinational fashion label possibly want with the head of a Mr. Dubois needs Mr. Adrien to come back to work, Bruno said simply. I was getting to that, Bruno. Marcel snapped. Just trying to be helpful, sir, Bruno sighed, shooting Marinette a deadpan expression that clearly read, I get paid exactly enough to put up with this shit. Because Adrien was such a stellar junior executive in charge of whatever he was in charge of. Marinette said with a small frown. I'm sure you could find someone more qualified than he is to fill his shoes, couldn't you? Not that the inner workings of a successful fashion label are anything to concern yourself with, Marcel sneered, earning an eye roll from his secretary. But Adrien's qualities extend beyond his capacity as a middle manager. It would be a disservice to Gabriel's memory if his son were not part of his legacy going forward. Marinette's eyes slowly traced the ceiling for a few moments until she realized what Marcel was really driving at. You can't control the board without Adrian's support, Marinette said, shaking her head. I can control them just fine, Marcel insisted, cheeks coloring. Things would be easier if Adrian was a part of the picture still. Translation, Marinette thought, now that Gabriel's son isn't blindly supporting me, no one else is. I'm sure it would be, Marinette sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. That still doesn't explain why you're talking to me and not Adrian right now. Mr. Adrian has not been returning our calls, Bruno remarked. I think that's your answer then, Marinette shrugged. Yes, well, I'm not the kind of man who takes no for an answer, Marcel said like that was something to be proud of. Of course not, Marinette sighed. But this sounds like something that's between you and Adrian's answering machine, not me. I was hoping you could persuade him, Marcel said, taking a step closer to Marinette only to stop when she pushed herself off the desk, towering a few inches over him in heels. You think I'll have better luck? Marinette snorted derisively. We looked over the security camera footage of when Adrian left and we know the two of you are close, Marcel said, smiling in a way that made Marinette's skin crawl. She wasn't ashamed of her relationship with Adrian, but the fact that Marcel Dubois had insight into her personal life was enough to send a shudder of disgust passing through her. You want me to convince my friend to go back to a job he hates, Marinette said, shaking her head. Why in God's name would I do something like that? Marcel chuckled as though he had been waiting all afternoon for her to ask that very question. I thought you cared about your little shop here. What does that have to do with? Marinette trailed off, squinting at Marcel for a moment. The sudden string of cancellations she got throughout the week had been completely unexplainable. Sylvia had even bitterly suggested that someone was going around scaring their potential clients away. Marinette had laughed at her then, now it wasn't so funny. What did you do? Marinette seethed, fighting the urge to completely bury her fist in Marcel's smug, shit-eating grin. I needed you to understand that I don't make idle threats, Marcel chuckled, cleaning his glasses casually. I simply gave one or two retailers the choice of carrying your lines, or ours. It's not my fault they would rather go with a more trusted brand. Marinette inherited 3 things from her mother, a tea set her grandmother brought with her from China, a laugh that could be heard 3 doors down, and a glare that could melt steel beams when properly used. Bruno paled a little as the woman's glare and even Marcel's satisfied smile slipped a few notches, standing so close to a properly infuriated Marinette Dupain-Cheng. So we understand each other, Marcel said, clearing his throat. If you ensure Adrian's cooperation, I promise you'll find the retailers of Paris to be a little more sympathetic to your brand. Marinette looked one of the most affluent, powerful, influential men in the fashion industry up and down, took a deep breath, and said, Wow, you are such a dick. Marcel's grin dropped, shocked that someone much less this girl had just spoken to him in such a manner. He looked to Bruno, who suddenly looked at Marinette like she was Père Noël finally bringing him that pony he always wanted. You just, Marcel stammered, wiping his brow. I beg your pardon. Let me get this straight, Marinette seethed, clenching the edge of the desk behind her. You are the acting chairman of a multinational corporation. You have almost unlimited power to shape this company how you see fit, but you need Adrian to come back to work because you have the charisma of an avocado that's been left in the sun for too long. So instead of I don't know, being a marginally less repulsive human being and apologizing for being the fashion industry's biggest dick, did Marcel turned to Bruno. Did she just call me a you decide to go behind Adrian's back, blackmail his friends, and attempt to emotionally manipulate him into returning to a job he hates, again, working for the fashion industry's biggest dick, Marinette concluded, face hot and hands shaking. But the real clincher is that you thought I would go along with this psychopathic scheme, which leads me to believe that not only are you if you call me a dick again, I'll the fashion industry's biggest dick, Marinette said, teeth grinding together. But you are a phenomenally stupid dick who lacks basic empathy and understanding of how actual human beings operate and relate to each other. Does that sound about right? Basically, Bruno muttered, coughing when Marcel turned to him, red-faced and spluttering. You made your offer, Marinette said, pushing herself off her desk as Marcel took a step back towards Bruno. Here's mine, you will leave my office under your own power or you will leave under mine. I could make your life hell, girl, Marcel spat. I spent 4 years taking the New York subways to school. I think I can handle hell, Marinette said coolly, folding her arms across her chest. Now if you'll excuse me, Marinette's heart thundered in her ears as she passed a dumbstruck Marcel Dubois and an awestruck Bruno, opening the door to her office to see Ellie and Sylvia recoil from the door, pretending to chat by the coffee machine while eyeing Marcel warily. Thank you for your time, monsieur, Marinette said stiffly. But I have to get back to work. The look of surprised indignation on Marcel's face suggested he was not expecting Marinette to do anything other than whimper and plead and do anything he asked to save her business. Needless to say, it had been some years since Marcel had been shown the door by anyone, much less a woman half his age. So naturally, he took this tantamount rejection with the grace and dignity affluent middle-aged men are known for, knocking over the mannequin as he stormed out of the office. We'll see if you're so flippant when you're begging me for a job, Marcel groused. You clearly don't know much about me if you think I'll beg for just anyone, Marinette said dryly, watching Marcel storm out of the building, slam the front door behind him. After a moment, Bruno stuck his head back through the door, mouthing, sorry, before following his employer. Ellie and Sylvia turned to Marinette wearing twin expressions of confusion and trepidation. Ellie, Sylvia, I think we need to talk, Marinette sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose and beckoning her partners into her office. Dear MLLE. Dupain Cheng, at this time we feel it would be inappropriate to continue business relations despite earlier verbal agreements of interest due to a number of extraneous circumstances. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors and hope to do business with Cochinelle should opportunities rise in the future. All the best, Chiffon's boutique. Marinette's fingers steepled, teeth grinding together so intently that she feared she'd need dentures before the week was out. She supposed the luck her business had up until that point had to run out somewhere, she just didn't know it would be because of a grubby little fruit merchant like Marcel Dubois. If Marinette was conflicted, her partners saw the path forward as exceptionally clear. Adrien Agreste was the root of the problem, in their opinion, and their relationship, could she even call it that, brought this mayhem down on their heads. He either had to go, or Marinette had to somehow convince him to return to work for Marcel. Neither option was appealing to her. She would either have to end their friendship or poison it on the orders of a grubby little oily-haired toad demon. If she didn't, she could expect a long, long string of emails harming her business and threatening not only her livelihood but the livelihood of her partners as well. Was that fair? Ellie and Sylvia didn't benefit from her intensely personal friendship with Adrien, so was it fair that they suffered for her happiness? Did she have a right to put their livelihoods on the line for her own personal pleasure? Was it more wrong to send Adrien back to a 7-figure-a-year job than to crush her partner's dreams of becoming successful? Was Adrien really worth jeopardizing her lifelong goals for? She ruminated in the empty office, silently staring at the screen in front of her and biting her tongue to keep angry tears in check when the door at the front of the studio opened with a jingle. Hello. Adrien's voice echoed in the empty office, bringing with it delight and dread for Marinette. Anyone home? In the back. Marinette closed the email, massaging her temples as she slowly rose to her feet. Maybe seeing Adrien would clear her head. Or knock knock, Adrien said, pushing the door open with his foot. You in here? Yeah, Marinette said, turning around. Justin, fuck. No. Fuck that shit. You, okay? Adrien asked, frowning at her deadpan, slightly slack-jawed expression of disbelief at his attire, or lack thereof. The black muscle shirt hugged his chest and left his arms and collar bare, tucked into a pair of Balmain jeans that probably cost more than Marinette's monthly rent, which was already ridiculous. She didn't know if he intended to look like the star of a bodice-ripping supermarket romance novel or if he laid out his clothes without a thought of what it might do to her. Either way, it was damn inconsiderate to not at least warn her before showing up dressed like that. Yeah, Marinette said, shaking her head. Yeah, just hungry, that's all. While this was technically true in more ways than one, she didn't want to risk overindulging. After a weekend of sex usually reserved for her deepest fantasies, she couldn't lie and say she wasn't at least a little tempted by the notion of Adrien bending her over her desk and bringing a whole new meaning to the term, not safe for work. But she didn't want their relationship to be based solely on bed-breaking sex, as enjoyable as that would be. I bet, Adrien chuckled, scratching the back of his neck as the hem of his shirt threatened to tug free of the waistband of his jeans. There was never any protocol to follow after two people had railed one another for the better part of a weekend, so Adrien didn't quite know what to expect walking into Marinette's office. Don't imagine you have much time to get out to eat, do you? Not much time, Marinette chuckled, wondering if it would be bad protocol to pin him against the door and start ripping his clothes off. But I make time for those, important to me. Adrian nearly purred at the word, important, cheeks coloring and straightening up a little bit. I'm on Alia's level then. Don't get ahead of yourself, Marinette snorted. Just because you're in the same bracket as Aaliyah doesn't mean you're on her level. Figured as much, Adrian sighed, scratching the back of his neck. I guess I'll take what I can get and be happy with it. Damn straight you will, Marinette giggled, wincing a little as her desktop pinged heralding the arrival of another email. This was not lost on Adrian as Marinette quickly turned her monitor off before her mood could be dampened even further. You, sure you're okay? Adrian asked. For a moment, she almost considered telling him. Honesty was always the best policy, right? Actually, Adrian, I'm not okay. Your colossal dick of a former boss is blackmailing me and trying to ruin my business because he wants me to use my feminine wiles on you to get you to cooperate with him. Oh no, Marinette. Adrian aggressed, won't allow you to suffer on my behalf. I'll talk to Marcel tomorrow, anything to keep my friends from being hurt because of me. Adrian, you don't have to do that. Oh, but I must, Marinette. You see, I have literally zero self-esteem when I'm not pretending to be a feline sex god, so I'll gladly return to a job I despise working for a sentient elephant scrotum if it means your business survives. But also I'm going to have to cut back on play dates because of this now. Wait, also Marcel wants me to move back to Japan to head up our branches there. Adrian. Sayonara Marinette-chan. Boku wa, itsumo anata wo o boat iru. Adrian. As a sub you were, sublime. Adrien. On second thought, honesty was highly overrated. Fine. Just work stuff, Marinette said dismissively, smoothing the wrinkles Marcel's fingers left on the blouse before turning to Adrian with a small smile. Fashion things, you know. I do, Adrian chuckled, glancing around the office with an approving nod. Not the easiest career choice, is it? Nope, Marinette sighed, scratching the back of her head. I'm sure your father didn't find it any easier when he was starting out, did he? That was before I came along, Adrian shrugged, stopping to stare at the blouse Marinette was working on with a thoughtful look in his eye. I saw pictures of his old office back when he was a kid starting out, but he didn't talk about it. I guess once you move through your hard times you don't really want to talk about it anymore, do you? I don't think I will, Marinette sighed, watching his eyes travel over the room. His eyes fell on the couch and Marinette suppressed a laugh at the way his cheeks pinked and he turned away with a small cough. It had only been a week before that she had laid there, lost in her own thoughts and the sound of Adrian's voice, and apparently he remembered it as fondly as she did. You like it though, Adrian said. It wasn't a question, the walls papered with half-finished designs spoke volumes about how much she enjoyed her work. It's all I ever wanted to do, Marinette said, taking some small strength in that. Marcel might run them out of business, but Marinette would continue to sketch, sew, and design even if it was just costumes for a theme park. It was her reason for living and nothing Marcel Dubois could do would ever change that. And yet what about you? Marinette asked quickly. Me. Are you enjoying your newfound time off? Marinette said, licking her lips anxiously. More than I thought I would, Adrian chuckled, cracking his neck. Nice being able to set my own schedule for literally the first time in my life. No thoughts of going back to your old job then, Marinette said, not even bothering to ask it. Her answer came in the way Adrian seemed to be carrying himself now, lighter and more carefree than she had seen him in years. Finally slipped out of the shackles his father's legacy had placed on him, he could thrive. Not likely, Adrian snorted, scratching the back of his neck. I like to wake up and not immediately be bombarded with meaningless phone calls and texts from my boss. Right, Marinette chuckled, fingers tracing circles lightly on her desk. That might be selfish of me, Adrian shrugged, glancing over to her as if seeking approval. Was it? A cold spike ran through Marinette as she realized that Marcel had been right. He was a fashion disaster and a Class A dickweasel, but the way Adrian looked to her with questioning eyes proved him right. She did have influence over him. She could spend the next hour and a half at dinner waxing on about Gabriel Agreste's legacy until Adrian was convinced he should return to work. He trusted her, he would listen to her. She could shake this bloody embargo and be back to business in no time. It was selfish, Marinette said quietly, biting her lip. She could ruin his life and he would thank her for it. She could so easily be another in a long line of people who used his name, his face, his body for her own personal gain and then dispose of him once she was done. Yeah, I guess it was. Adrian chuckled a little uneasily, gaze dropping a little. But, Marinette said quickly. But, who said being selfish is always a bad thing? Adrian blinked, raising his eyes as Marinette perched on the edge of her desk. Ellie and Sylvia would kill her in the morning, but their distemper would be easier to weather than the knowledge she had condemned someone she cared about deeply to a miserable existence. You said Marcel Dubois didn't appreciate you, Marinette said flatly. Like you felt people at your old office were using you, right? Right, Adrian said after a moment. So if he wasn't looking out for your best interests and the people working for him weren't either, who will? Marinette said. If not you. I guess you're right, Adrian conceded, watching as Marinette pushed herself off her desk and paced towards him. His eyes lingered at the patch of skin between her blouse collar, swallowing the urge to pop button after button off her shirt with his teeth. She looked gorgeous, setting. Streaming in the window behind her as she looked up at him with a radiant smile. If you ask me, Marinette said, reaching out and brushing a stray piece of pollen off his shirt. You deserve to be a little more selfish. Focus on your own wants and needs for a while instead of trying to please everyone all the time. Wants and needs. The pressure of her fingers lingering on his chest made several wants and needs immediately apparent to him, but mostly he felt relief. Truth be told, he had some lingering doubts about up and quitting out of the blue, wondering if it was fair to abandon his father's legacy with a note. But maybe he could stand to think about himself a little more. Maybe he didn't owe Marcel and the rest of the company anything more than he had already given them. Well, I'll add it to the list of things I'm trying to improve on, Adrian chuckled, hands shoved in his pockets so deeply there was no danger of picking her up and holding her against the wall as he kissed her. That was certainly a want and need he'd like to spend a few hours focusing on, but he remembered they had dinner to get to. Shall we? Of course, Marinette said, snatching her purse from the coat rack on her way out and turning off the lights. Your treat, right, Adrian said, blinking as he stared after her. Why again? You invited me out, Marinette said, turning around with a toothy smile. Courtesy suggests the one who extended the invitation should be the one that pays. True, Adrian chuckled. Also, you're really gross rich while I am not. Also true, Adrian laughed, warming Marinette as he fell into step beside her. She wanted to bottle that laugh, record it and play it back in the coming weeks when she was fighting an uphill battle against an entitled man-baby control freak. Still, it was her battle to fight. Marcel could go behind her back and sabotage her business at every turn, but it didn't change the fact that she and her partners could not be held down. They would use toothpicks if he took their needles, spin their own fabric if they were blocked off from fabric suppliers. If no store would carry their products. Own fabric if they were blocked off from fabric suppliers. If no store would carry their products, they would sell them online, in the street, wherever they could. She would be damned if that short, arrogant little pig-faced fruit merchant got in the way of her dreams. But for the moment, Marinette bottled the venom rising inside her, saving it for another day and taking comfort in the fact that somehow her personal life had become less complicated than her work life. If only by comparison. Chapter end notes: the plot thickens and the thick plottens. Welcome, old readers and new, to Act 2. Here be intrigue, secrets, fashion shows, corporate brinksmanship, changing living situations, practical applications of sex dungeons, the author foisting his crack pairings on you, old friends, new enemies, and of course Adrian and Marinette navigating their tangled web of feelings while hooking up more than 2 magnetized carabiners. Marcel is still kinda cartoonish, but he does what he needs to do, namely create drama while looking like a more punchable Nathan Lane. Because really, what is Ladybug fanfiction if someone isn't keeping a secret from someone else? Will Marinette's efforts to shield the fair damsel Adrian from distress backfire on her? Or is she just lucky enough to keep her not boyfriend while surviving the tantrums of a 50-year-old millionaire? Time will tell. But up next, Marinette meets her digital dome Obi-Wan, finds creative ways to deal with her stress from work, and goes shopping with Adrian for party favors.